This is the Rush Discuss, where the discuss is Rush. Welcome everybody to the showdown of the century. No, not really. This is just the final episode of the least popular bracket, where we will sum up everything that we've done in this bracket so far, and then carry out this bracket to its conclusion, where we will decide on the one song from all of these 18 songs that we would pick out of all of them if we had to only pick one.
It's been a wild 9 weeks. I can't believe it's been 9 weeks with this bracket. It's a long time.
It's been a long time, but it's been interesting for us to dive deep into these songs and to kind of pull apart why we think that other people might not like them, and then share what we enjoy about them and give more thought to these songs than we have before. I really enjoyed this bracket in some ways more than I enjoyed the first one.
Yeah, it's been really fun doing this one, and I agree. I think I enjoyed it more than the popular bracket as well. Just dive into these songs that may have a lower play count.
So, just as a recap, we will go through each of the pairings and say which one we picked, and then we will start getting to the tough business for today and start working through the rest of the bracket. So, week 1 was Face Up versus Dog Years, with Dog Years being the victor. Next was I Think I'm Going Bald versus Red Lenses. Red Lenses was the winner there. Superconductor versus Wish Them Well. Wish Them Well took that one. Double Agent versus Spindrift. Spindrift the winner. The Big Wheel versus Good News First. Good News First came out on top. Neurotica versus Anagram. Anagram being the winner. Lock and Key versus High Water. High Water taking that. Virtuality versus Time and Motion. Virtuality winning there. And then Tyshawn versus The Speed of Love from last week, with Tyshawn being the winner.
Which, speaking of which, I'm surprised we got no hate mail from anyone from that week, so we appreciate that.
I'm sure they just deleted us out of their podcasts and just wanted nothing more to do with us. But yeah, that's been an interesting thing about this bracket, is just bringing up all the disagreements and seeing where people's preferences are, and just being reassured that it doesn't matter that we can't all agree. The point of this is to inspire more discussion, and if us picking your least favorite song as a winner gets you fired up enough to reach out and join in the fun of discussion, then success.
All right, so let's go ahead and let them know how we're going to start this battle.
But before we dive in, there is one song that we won't be touching on again that I wanted to bring up, something that I found out after we did the episode. The opening in Neurotica is actually an organ that's playing those bass notes.
Really?
Yeah. It's not necessarily, not like a pipe organ, but just an electronic organ. But that's why the bass is so deep, resonant, and piercing. It's not strings that are playing it. It's the simulated organ, which can get as close to a sine wave as you can get, and it can cut through a lot more.
That's cool. I didn't know that. Thanks for adding that little bit of information about that awesome song that did not win, but is still a great song.
All right. Now to the actual bracket. The way this is going to work, I've grouped all the songs that were left over as close as I could to album, and the ones that weren't from the same album, I kept them as close to each other as possible, just for this next round of picks. But because we ended with 9 songs, you can't divide 9 by 2. And so there's a pairing that will feed into another pairing. So we've got Spindrift versus Good News First, and that will feed into another pairing on the bottom of this tournament bracket. So let's start right there. Spindrift versus Good News First. If we had to pick one, which one would it be?
Are we just going to spitfire this? Are we going to discuss deeply? I mean, this is a lot of songs to get through. I kind of just want to go with my gut here, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, because we've already talked about these songs quite a bit. People can go back and listen to previous episodes to see why they got to this point, but I don't think we need to really dive as deep with these. And I think if our gut instincts don't match up, then we can discuss a little bit and get to a consensus. But other than that, let's just dive in.
Well, my first gut instinct is Good News First.
I would agree with that because, like we talked about in the episode, I feel like Spindrift goes on a little bit more, and I think Good News First has a deeper thing to think about. I prefer the kind of odd approach that they took with that versus Spindrift.
All right, so that feeds into the next bracket. To then now we have, not the next bracket. That feeds into the next pairing now, which would mean that Wish Them Well is now paired with Good News First. Now that one's I need to think about that for a second. That one's a little more tough for me, I think.
Yeah, so the first instinct for me is to go with Good News First because I just love the chorus of Good News First more than I like the chorus of Wish Them Well. And I think there are more interesting twists and turns to that song than Wish Them Well. Wish Them Well is a very straightforward song. Not that there's a problem with that, but I prefer the twists and turns.
Actually, you're right, because my first instinct was Wish Them Well, but now that you say that and I'm thinking about it more, I would rather listen to Good News First over Wish Them Well. So let's take that as the winner here. All right, the next pairing is Dog Years versus Virtuality. I mean, if I had to choose between the two to listen to, I would choose Virtuality.
Yeah, it's a tough one because I was listening to all these songs from this bracket today, and I was just having a great time listening to all of them, remembering the discussions we had, and just realizing how good all these songs are and how much I just kind of let a lot of these slide by without listening to. And these two songs in particular, I just was really jamming out to today. And
of course.
Yeah, of course. And these two songs are just, they hit in the same space for me.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I don't understand how you mean it, except I do know how you mean it, because that's how I feel about them too.
And as much as I absolutely love Dog Years and that vocal performance like I talked about, there is also a really strong vocal performance in Virtuality. And I think the instrumental work in Virtuality is much stronger than in Dog Years. I think it's more engaging. The riff is excellent. And it's just a fun time. And something that we didn't bring up is the cool little like ping in the middle where they have the huge hit, the bump, 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 bump.
Definitely thought you just said peen, so I'm glad that's not what you said.
P-I-N-G, like the internet.
Yes.
But yeah, so that does it for me. Also, the fade out or the delay at the end where they hit the final thing and then it just fades off like waves.
That is a great moment.
So yeah, I think both of us are agreed Virtuality wins this round and moves on to the next.
Okay, next pairing, Tyshawn and High Water. Oh.
This is hard.
Well, a lot of people would say it's not hard because they don't like Tyshawn, so...
Yeah.
But I like Tyshawn.
Yeah, there are plenty of people who would say anything but Tyshawn.
Yeah. Okay, I know I really wanted Tyshawn to win in that episode because I honestly did want it to win. But against High Water, you just changed the game, Adam.
Yeah, this pairing hits way different. I think also because they are always paired together already in the album. Because these are the last two songs in the album.
Sorry, I didn't know what you meant in the album. I thought you meant just like out in the world they're paired. I'm like, what?
No. If you're listening to the album, you're always going to hear them back to back. And so to me, it's almost like they're the same song just because.
I gave him a side glance just now. I'm like, no, they're not.
Obviously, they're not the same song, but to me, because I listened to this album so much, and the way that the album is structured, you have all these high intensity things, and then you have the relaxation. And so it's almost like two-part relaxation with these songs. And so I'm just so used to hearing them back to back. It's hard to split them apart, just for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so
I know what you mean now.
So something I didn't bring up about Tyshawn, well, two things. One, kind of a goofy thing. In Roadshow, Neil he's talking about the different things he can trigger on his electronic drum kit. And just he loved the freedom to trigger any sound in the world. And he was listing off different sounds, and one of them he brings up is a plastic water bottle hit by a toothbrush, which they used in Tyshawn. And I'm not entirely sure where that sound falls, but I think it's pretty cool that yet again he's innovating to come up with interesting sounds for interesting textures and rhythms. But second thing about Tyshawn is when I was serving a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which is a 2-year mission for young men. At least that's the typical length of it. You can serve less time. And then for women, they generally serve up to 18 months, but it can be any time less than those times as well. But anyway, it's different than other Christian missions in that you're serving that time straight through. You don't choose where you go, and it's changed a little bit since when I served, which is about 10 years ago, which is crazy to say. At the time that I served, you didn't just call your family willy-nilly. You got once a week to write an email to your family and to read anything that someone might have sent. You could get snail mail, and then on Christmas and Mother's Day, you could call home and talk with them, because the idea was that you were setting aside that time to focus on the work. But then there was a time period where I was really struggling, and I got the inspiration to ask my mom to send out a couple CDs with some religious music, instrumental religious music as well. And then, but I also felt like I should get Tyshawn and Bravado. And I thought it was kind of weird because I'm like, these aren't really religious songs. I don't know how this is going to help me focus, but they both really helped me dial in, relax, and be able to get through the hard stuff and be able to better focus on the work that I was doing. And so I've always had that connection with Tyshawn. And so even saying that, after all of that, I will still have to go with High Water.
What a build-up, Adam. I wasn't sure. I mean, where exactly you were going with that. I have to agree. I love High Water, and I will have to choose High Water, even though it was such a great discussion last week to choose Tyshawn. This is the strange thing about this project is we painstakingly go through each pairing every week, choose the winners, and then towards the end it's just like, well, you're out now. But it's all for fun. It's just all fun. So High Water is the winner there. On to our next pairing of Red Lenses and Anagram. Red Lenses.
Yeah, Red Lenses was going to win this one.
I wasn't even going to let you answer. It's Red Lenses. I love that song. Oh, man. Not blue.
Yeah. I think in some part because Grace Under Pressure is just a much stronger album than Presto musically. And so that helps quite a bit. But also Red Lenses is just such a fun song.
It is. It is. Red Lenses.
So that does it for that first round. Now in this second round, we have Good News First versus Virtuality. and High Water versus Red Lenses. Now it's going to get a little tougher, I think. But first, gut reaction.
What's your gut reaction?
Gut reaction to Good News First versus Virtuality is Virtuality.
Mine was Good News First. Oh man. You're gonna have to play a little bit. Like skip to like the middle of Good News First. Okay, so me and Adam just listened to just a bit of these songs to try to decide. I'm still going with Good News First.
Why?
I can't explain. There are just some moments in that song that go straight to my soul and I don't know, speaks to me deeply. And out of the two, I would listen to Good News First on repeat over Virtuality on repeat, even though Virtuality is such a solid song and it's fun and I enjoy it a lot. In this situation, I have to choose Good News First.
I think for me, the initial reaction for Virtuality is because it is such a fun song and has some great pleasing chord changes in there in the
really
in the
good
chorus. Like there's that the descending chord progression, do 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 do, that's going on in the background, which is it's just something that is just pleasing to the ears, and it pulls you into it. But when we listened to Good News First, I was reminded of the cool chord change that goes on in there. Which I'll pull it up so you can hear what I'm talking about.
The saddest words you could ever say, but I know you'll remember that day, and the most beautiful words I could ever say, and the most beautiful words, some would say they never fear a thing.
So they do this cool thing where it makes you think that it's going to cadence and that the chorus is just going to end, and then it just like stretches it out and it gives you this feeling of like free fall for a moment, and then you're back in and it's extended and there's
The coolest bridge ever.
yeah, and then it takes you into the bridge. And so by listening again and being reminded of those extremely cool chord changes, it switched me over to Good News First.
I've convinced you.
Because I think it's really smart, really interesting songwriting that they did with Good News First.
Yes. Good. Oh, you dropped your pencil. Okay, Good News First is
Going into the semifinals.
going in the semifinals.
Or I guess technically the finals. They
Oh,
were
yes,
just in
this
the
is
semifinals.
the semifinals. The finals, yes. The first in the finals is Good News First. I love you, Virtuality, but Good News First is the winner here. Okay, the next semifinal pairing is High Water. I can't even say it. I can't. The next pairing in the semifinals is High Water versus Red Lenses. That pains me so much to say because that is tough.
Yeah. Because what did it for me, High Water versus Tyshawn, why High Water won out for me is because the extremely interesting textures that are going on in that.
Not to mention that intro is so fun. Oh, you have some notes here on High Water.
Yeah. So the cool thing with High Water that I wanted to bring up, in the rhythm section, so meaning the bass guitar and the drum kit, they're doing something that is very reminiscent of La Villa Strangiato. And so I'll pull that up for you so you can hear. So if you hear that rhythm, and if you remember from La Villa Strangiato, that's the recurring rhythm there in the intro. There you got the do do do
Yeah, it's almost verbatim.
Yeah, so it's a sweet callback there,
That's
along with the
super
other
cool.
stuff that's going on. And then you have the guitar, which the chords are very similar to Bacchus Plateau from The Fountain of Lamneth. I'll bring that up as well. This is not as easily remembered for a lot of people. So I will bring up The Fountain of Lamneth, and you can hear the guitar that's going on that I'm talking about that he references. Maybe not knowingly, but it definitely comes across.
Another endless day. Silhouettes of day.
So he's going up and down in a very just simple chord changes there. Now let's pull up high water and I'll show you what I mean. So it's a very similar chord progression that's going on there. Just those simple chord changes. And so I think it's cool that even if they weren't going for it, even if they weren't going for the callbacks, it's just cool to hear them use similar patterns that they have before and bring it into a new song.
We still have to choose one.
Yes. But before we move on, I have to bring up something I forgot to talk about with Anagram, even though that lost in its fight against Red Lenses. One thing that if you go back and listen to our episode where we talk about Anagram, I was about to make a point, and then
Oh, yeah.
and then Julianne got excited about something, and then I completely lost the point and didn't even realize until after the fact that I had forgotten to even get to that point.
Neither of us remembered that. I'm sorry, by the way.
No, it wasn't a big deal. But it just cracked me up because we both got excited about the point you brought up that I completely forgot my point. But all the point that I was making was that an element of songwriting that's sometimes overlooked is that when writing lyrics, you aren't always going for ease of understanding, if that makes sense. Like you aren't trying to get a specific message across as much as you're putting together words that feel good together and sound good together and just kind of roll off the tongue or just are pleasing to say. You see this in like Yes lyrics. They don't always mean much and they aren't like super deep all the time, but they just have a pleasing poetic feel to them. You also notice this at the end of Jacob's Ladder, the shifting shafts of shining weave the fabric of their dreams. There's no need to really super dive into what the deep meaning behind those lyrics are. It's just a pleasure to say alliteration is fun. And sometimes that's an element of lyric writing. And so with Anagram, it's not that it has to mean anything. It's just that it's fun to say. It's just a really cool element of the art that sometimes gets missed because sometimes we're just looking for lyrics to mean something.
I'm so glad you finally got to get that point out. That was really great. Unfortunately, like you said, Anagram isn't the winner here, but it is such a great song. But now back to the pairing of High Water and Red Lenses. That's really an interesting one because they're completely different and not even close to the same in content or topic or vibe or anything.
The only thing that I could see, well, two things that I could see being similar is that High Water comes from an album whose cover is red. And Red
Really?
Lenses is about
Oh my
red. But on a more serious note,
Nice.
they both are built musically on a lot of texture and a lot of interesting things going on and just different sounds popping up and going away. So that's really the only thing that I think they have in common because everything else is completely different. the tone of them is just completely different. Red Lenses is such a satirical, biting.
So sarcastic.
Yeah, it's just a take on current events and taking those observations and putting them in a format that is easy to then draw parallels at any time. And then High Water is just meditative and just brings that yearning of finding center and peace that we all have. And
I guess it is kind of an interesting pairing, because isn't that what we're kind of looking for in Red Lenses? Is that peace from the, I don't know, annoying things that are happening, really? Red Lenses cracks me up so much, though. I don't know if I could live without those hilarious moments.
I think I have to go with Red Lenses because there is an element of playfulness and spontaneity at the end that you just don't get in a lot of Rush songs.
Yeah,
There's
it's
just
really unique.
There's the ad-libbing that's going on with Geddy. There's really cool bass stuff that's happening at the end. And all throughout, it's definitely one of the more funky bass lines that he ever trotted out. But there's just so many goofy things that just make it so endearing. And then to get that little insight that you only get every once in a while to how talentedly goofy all these musicians are.
Well, it's interesting because when we started this bracket, I don't know, however long ago it was, Red Lenses was back in the second pairing along with I Think I'm Going Bald. And even then, I had a feeling that Red Lenses would go far, but I wasn't quite sure. But yeah, out of the two, man, it's so tough to get this far and have to say goodbye to one of them. But Red Lenses continues to be one of my favorites across the board.
So do we agree? And it looks like Red Lenses is facing off against Good News First. So before we dive into this discussion, I just want to say something about this whole bracket and an interesting insight that has just been reiterated. Just how much popularity has little to do with actual content and quality, because just about all of these songs are so well crafted and are some of our favorites, but they definitely are not the most popular ones. And the point of this podcast has never been to point people towards popular Rush. It's never been to say, hey, if you want to know what Rush is all about, these are the songs to go to, because there are plenty of people to do that. And to a certain extent, that's an objective thing. It's just an objective fact that Moving Pictures is the definitive Rush album. It is what shot them to superstardom. It is what people will always go back to as being the perfect Rush album. There's a huge consensus on that already. And if you want to know the stuff that the general public says about Rush, it's easy to find. But I think there's more value in having discussions about what people's individual preferences are with Rush, because then it leads to a more nuanced and open and stimulating discussion about Rush, because then you can bridge the gaps between us and you can see other people's perspectives and take into account their musical preferences and realize that Rush really does have something for just about everybody. So with that out of the way, Good News First versus Red Lenses, which one will be the champion? First gut feeling is brain freeze.
Like, I don't have a gut feeling for this one. I guess it comes down to what moments would you never want to live without? Because there are such great moments in both of these. Which ones do you want to keep?
I think for me, more than that point, which is a great point, But I think for me, what it comes down to is which of these songs would we, as the Rush Discuss, want to put forward to other people as being this song is not popular to the masses because it's uniquely Rush. And this is an aspect of Rush that isn't popular with the mainstream.
Well, that makes it easier. But like, and to that point, that's the entire bracket is us presenting to the world. And well, what is Rush? But I guess, to help pick the winner, that makes it an easier choice, I guess.
Because I figure the one that has to be the champion has to kind of encapsulate all the other choices as well.
As much as I absolutely love Good News First, and I just fought for it versus Virtuality, I think if you're going to make that point, it has to be Red Lenses. There's nothing like Red Lenses, and it is such a unique song, not even just in terms of Rush, just in general.
Yeah, I initially thought that I wanted Red Lenses because of that reason, but then thinking about Good News First, I think there is a strong case to be made that Good News First has a lot of those things unique to Rush and extremely interesting and encapsulating those things.
Well, now I'm not sure because now I'm thinking about it more.
But I think Red Lenses still beats it out simply because of the cut loose bit at the end.
I know, that is honestly the moment I was thinking of if you couldn't live without one, it would be that moment. I wish we could have a tie, honestly. But that's not the Rush Discuss way. And I have to remind myself at the end, this does not mean these songs disappear into nothing. But I mean, if anything, it's pretty sweet that Red Lenses would come out the winner. Because I would imagine it's probably one of what people would consider one of the weakest songs. And yet we're putting it up on top.
Yeah, I think it's considered a weak song by people who only have a rudimentary knowledge of Rush. But for those of us who have a deeper love for the band, who have listened to everything and love just about everything, Red Lenses, it really isn't that weird of a song, and it isn't a weak song at all. Mm-hmm. But in the context of people just approaching the band for the first time, this song can come across very off-putting. And something else that we want to do with this podcast is not just drum up conversation amongst us who already love Rush and who are already deep into that world, but hopefully this can be a podcast that you can give to your friends or other people who are just starting their Rush journey or who have no idea about Rush, or they only know the popular songs from the radio. Maybe this can be an opening to give them more insight into Rush, maybe give them an idea of what songs they could be looking for. And if nothing else, even if they don't go and listen to the songs, which we would hope that they would, but maybe it gets them to understand why Rush is such the cultural phenomenon that it is, why it has such an enduring fan base, why it is that people will listen to full albums that they release and not just stick to their greatest hits.
Dang, that's really true. There are a lot of bands that I do just stick to the greatest. It's not because there's anything wrong with the other things. I just do. But Rush, it's just all of it all the time. It's hit shuffle on every single album. Yeah.
And there really isn't another band that I can do that with. There's some bands that I can listen to full albums all the way through, and I can take a small section of their stuff and listen to all that just shuffled up. But then I get tired of it and I move on, and maybe I'll come back to it for a little bit, or maybe, I'll get back in the mood for it and turn it on. But Rush is just kind of the default. If I don't know what else to listen to for music, then throw that on and I'll find something within the whole extensive catalog that will just perfectly fit my mood.
Absolutely. That's wild to think that we are now done with this bracket, though. It's been a really fun 9 weeks. And the winner is Red Lenses. Who would have thought? That's awesome.
Now that we've finished that bracket, now that we have a declared winner, we need to get into some business. So let's put on our business pants.
What?
And no, it's nothing too serious. We just have to first apologize that this episode is a day late. There's just a lot of stuff going on. And now we can finally share what stuff is going on. The biggest of which is that we're moving from our apartment into an actual house. We are
Hopefully.
we are first time home buyers, and it's just making more sense for us to actually have a home. If we're going to be paying monthly anyway, might as well have a place that we can actually thrive, have enough space to do what we want to do. This place is great. It's got a shop, it's on an acre, but still within a neighborhood with a lot of opportunities for our kids as they grow older. And
a lot of space to podcast.
yes, we'll actually be able to have a dedicated room rather than pulling the microphone out of storage and setting up in the living room and hoping our kids don't wake up and just having a single microphone and having to kind of throw it all together. We'll actually have a dedicated room that we can do our recording and do our other creative endeavors.
So with that, we are sad to announce we are taking a little bit of a hiatus until an undecided date in December. We're going to get through Thanksgiving, get through the move, and then we will announce when we will be returning in December. But so far, we don't have an exact date yet, but hopefully we'll be able to let you know as that gets closer. And we're super sad. We obviously want to keep putting out episodes, but it's only about a month, and we will start that next bracket, which you'll have to wait and find out what it is.
Yeah, and among all the things that go on with moving and packing and getting ready to close on a house, there have been trips that we've been going on, and then there was a little bit where Julianne just was consistently feeling crummy for a good trimester, so to speak, because we are also growing our family. We have 2 children, but we also now have one on the way. And Julianne is due in April. And so that'll be another bridge that we will cross when it gets to it, as far as how we'll manage the episodes towards the end of the pregnancy. But yeah, just all these things have come together to make it really difficult for this next month or so to get this stuff out for you. But we look forward to being able to get things set up to put on some really good episodes for this next bracket. I think it'll be really fun.
And we can't wait to tell you what the bracket is, but you'll have to wait. But we are excited to be with you again soon, and we are so grateful for you guys listening.
And so to all of you who do listen consistently, we thank you. And for anyone who might be new, we ask that you bear with us and patiently wait this out. We will have new content coming out. But until then, thank you for spending your time with us on the Rush Discuss.